Hey, what's going on?
What's up, man?
Not much, not much. I'm glad to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Good, man. I'm good. Just watching my son right now ride his bike.
So how's everything going with regards to like Corona and everything? I know. So first of all, like tell everybody like what you do for a living.
Mhm. Well, I'm a physical preparation coach, or strength and conditioning coach, whatever you want to call it. Work with well over 80 some odd MMA fighters. A lot of them in the UFC: Dustin Poirier, Joanna Jacek, Edson Barbosa, Junior Dos Santos. That's where really like kind of formed a niche there.
Mhm.
I played college football and was a professional fighter myself for American Top Team for around 8 years. Now, gym owner. I own two gyms, have two facilities in South Florida that we run a lot of the strength and conditioning out of too as well. Also train high school football, judo, wrestling, college wrestling, high school wrestling, and also and boxing, professional boxing. So large group of athletes. Been
Mhm.
doing this for around 12 years now.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a extensive combat, career that you've got going there. How did you like? What made you get into it initially? Like, were your parents in athletics, or like, how did that even come about?
No, I've always played sports since I was a little kid. I started playing baseball at like the age of 4, I believe, and then started playing football around the age of 7, and then also did Kempo karate since I was 4 years old. So I was always engulfed in like the sporting aspect and
Mhm.
athletics in general. They kind of, my parents just kind of threw me in there, and it was probably the best thing they could ever do for me because it helped pave the way for my profession right now. So
Yeah.
the one thing that I could say is that the one thing that my parents did instill in me, it was hard work ethic, and that's something that I seen them do every day. Get up every day and work hard and do what they need to do to provide for their family and their kids. So I keep that going as an adult now with my kids. So and then I would say when I really started getting into weight training was around the age of 12 to 13. My grandfather was the one to actually take me to Gold's Gym,
Mhm.
and he was around the age, I think he was like 72 years old, but he was bench pressing like 275 for rep. And I was like, all right, well, he knows what he's doing. So he took me around the gym, and then I started to really understand a little bit more about like, proper tempos and rep schemes and things like that. Just very
Mhm.
basic stuff. And then I started getting ready for high school football, and I started to bring all of my teammates and friends over to my garage, and I would start to throw together these workout routines and,
Mhm.
and training protocols, just based off of knowledge. There's my son right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I see him.
You go over there, please. You gonna go ride your bike, or you wanna stay? You wanna stay? Okay.
Yeah, he's good. Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so from there, I was like, all right, I gotta find a way to get better at this. So I started reading up on Joe DeFranco and what
Mhm.
he had going on over there at DeFranco's gym, and then that got me looking into more of Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell, and then from there, Louis got me into reading more of the old Soviet texts. So I
Mhm.
was really just kind of a step by step of understanding of proper periodization, and the conjugate sequencing system is kind of what we utilize today with the athletes. But since I was about 16, 17 years old, I've always wanted, I always wanted to be the biggest, the strongest, fastest, the most powerful. And also I wanted to look good too, as well. Anybody
Yeah,
that says
of
they
course.
didn't get into it to not look good for the females or whatever the case, they're lying to you. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was the main driver. And then I wanted to be dominant on whatever playing field I was at.
Mhm.
As far as getting into MMA, it kind of just almost, I don't want to say fell into my lap, but after college, um, I ended up having to leave Alabama State where I played football and went to school because of my family. Actually, my mom developed lupus, which is an
Oh,
autoimmune
man.
disease, and my dad got into a bad car accident. He was pretty much wheelchair bound, and so there was no money coming in. NCAA wouldn't allow me to get a job,
Mhm.
and also I was taking a liking to boxing, and I was boxing on the off season. So I was really getting into that. But on top of the fact that Alabama wasn't like the greatest environment for me. And I'm a Florida boy, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to the beaches. I'm used to diversity.
Right.
So it's really different. Not to say that I wouldn't have stuck it out, but again, I had a choice to make. I had to make it for my family, and so I did. And I actually ended up leaving Alabama State, finishing up my degree though, and then started doing like personal training. And after that, I was like, man, I need to compete. I need to do something.
Right.
And so I was looking at boxing gyms around the area, and Buddy McGurk had a gym in Vero Beach, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from where I was. And I was like, man, I know I'm going to want to train at least 2 times a day. So getting to and from that location isn't going to be the best way to do it, especially because I had no money. I had no gas money. I had nothing. So I was like, all right, let me look for like a local area. And it just so happened I seen an American Top Team gym that was ran by Dean Thomas. It was an affiliate gym up in Port St. Lucie, Florida, which is like 90 minutes from the headquarters of where we're at now. And so I went there, and just so happened as I went there, Dean was actually opening up the door to the gym. So I ran up on him and I was like, hey, man, I want to train. I just want to box. I don't want to do MMA. He's like, all right, man, just come in, try a class and see how it goes. And in the beginning, I had him on my podcast, and he actually said it. He was like, when he first met me, because I was so raw and like, and my mentality was really, let's face it, I came from a humble beginning. I came from a not so great neighborhood. So my street mentality was still there, right?
Right.
He was like, he told the gym manager at the time, he was like, man, whatever you do, get that guy out of here. So I went to the classes. I did really well. And then they started to see that I was not the person that they thought I was, actually a better person than what they thought I was. And I was a better teammate than anything, because I come from a sporting background where team sports, and I was always the captain of all my teams and getting guys together. So it was easy for me to get all the people around and help the gym out. So I remember him saying to me I needed to get down to 155 pounds. Now, I graduated high school at 205. So I was like, I haven't been 155 pounds since like before middle school.
Right,
so
right.
It was a big thing. And then he's like, you need to start grappling and do jiu-jitsu. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to roll around on the ground. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just want to box. And he was like, listen, he's like, trust me, for your structure, for your body type, and for your athleticism, this is going to be good for you. So I started doing it. And then I actually started to like it a little bit there. I didn't really get fully into it actually until about, I want to say maybe 6 years ago, really heavily into jiu-jitsu. And that kind of hindered me in my pro fights, because I was doing really well as an amateur, undefeated, and then I turned pro. And then my first loss was against a guy who had a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and it was the main event, my pro debut. This was actually in Louisiana. And the funny thing is, with Dustin Poirier, it kind of goes full circle. And Dustin was actually there in the stands watching. And I fought his one of the guys that he trained with. And I got caught in an armbar. And so from then on, I was like, man, I really need to start paying attention to my jiu-jitsu. So, I've been going there ever since. And, I ended up retiring at the age of 26 just because my gym business, I opened up my gym at the age of 22. And I was building a brand. I was building a business. And then concussions started to occur a lot more. I've had probably about 8 concussions, man. So the 8 concussions caused me to call it quits in a way, and focus on coaching. So that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, like, to start from the beginning of what you were saying, we have some commonalities, because so my wife is from Florida. She's from the Tampa area, and her mother has lupus. So my mother-in-law has lupus. So it's a terrible, disease. Like, she was fine for a while, and then it started one thing after another. She started spiking, like having some issues from it. It was bad. So I can definitely, feel you on that, as far as like trying to take care of your family and stuff, and that kind of situation. That's tough to be able to deal with at a young age, But as far as like your competition and everything like that, I guess like at a certain point you have to decide like, which route you want to take. Do you want to take the professional fighting route and try to like just finish it off there, or, you know, or go like the business route. And, you know, for some people it's because if you think about it, as far as fighters are concerned, I mean, there's really only like, right, like a handful of them that, you know, make it big, right? The rest of them are just fighting, you know, and they're getting paid, but it's, you know, it's
Yeah.
not the same, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's interesting. What did you think about like did you get a chance to see 249?
Yeah, yeah. I seen the main event,
You
or the
saw the
main event,
main.
and I seen no, I seen, what did I watch? I watched pretty much the last two fights. So I seen who
So
fought
you
the
saw like Cejudo and
Cejudo.
Dominic.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of Cejudo,
Hmm.
and then I watched the main event.
Yeah. What did you think of the main event?
I honestly was impressed with Gagey because we know Gagey. I mean, just preparing for, like, getting him prepared, Dustin
Hmm.
getting prepared for him. Like, we knew that he's tough, he's durable.
Hmm.
But his coach that he has now um, has definitely helped him out with his boxing and his
Yeah.
ability to evade punches, and that's something that he really wasn't doing a whole lot of.
Right.
Obviously, taking shots and firing them back, but you know, I think Trevor Whitman is the coach. I think Trevor really honed in on his skills, and maybe it's a fact of, you know, Gagey just actually listening to Trevor at this point, you know,
Sure.
and taking his advice and actually learning. You know, I mean, and I get it, man. He's a true fighter, so like sometimes the game plan goes out the window, you know. So,
Right.
but he stuck to the game plan. He executed it very well. Um, I think that I don't think he exposed Ferguson. I think that just, you know, that night he was just well prepared,
Right. Right.
take on whatever Ferguson was trying to give him.
Yeah, and he doesn't have like a whole lot of like fakes. Like Gaethje doesn't. From what I've seen, he doesn't fake a lot. Like every punch you know, he goes for it, and a lot of them he was landing. I mean, clean. You know,
Yeah.
Ferguson. So it was interesting for like when I don't know if you remember, but he went to his corner, and his corner was like, take 10% off your punches, because he was just. I mean, he was just, you know, drilling him like. So he was saying that, oh, before the fight, oh, I only have like 12 minutes in me and I got to finish the fight in 12 minutes. But his
Mm-hmm.
conditioning was phenomenal. I mean, he was going the same
I
pace all 5 rounds. Go ahead.
I don't think it was a fact of his conditioning, because I know the people that he works with over at like the
Mm-hmm.
UFC PI, and you know, I don't think it's a fact of his conditioning as opposed to him just being able to pace himself properly. You
Right.
know, it doesn't matter how well you prepare, how well like for me, I can prepare a guy 100% and his numbers be off the charts and his VO2 up and his lactate thresholds up. But, you know, if he can't put it together from a skills perspective and he doesn't have that technical efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
he is going to gas out no matter what, because you're putting in maximal effort throughout a 5-minute round. So
Right.
that right there plays a role in his ability to calm himself down and actually, you know, almost take a step back and evaluate what's going on in there, and so that he can calm his mind down, which in turn will calm his heart rate down and
Mm-hmm.
his breathing down. Then he's not going to be gassed out at all. He's actually
Yeah.
going to be able to take his shots more appropriately.
So Dustin finished him, right, in their fight, right?
Yeah.
If I remember. So
Yeah.
how did you like? What was the plan for Gaethje when Dustin fought him? Because I mean, he did incredibly well against him. So
Yeah, I mean, when it came down to that, we knew that Gaethje was going to come after him and try to just kind of swarm him and go for the kill. And then we also were not counting out the fact that he would try to take him down. So we were doing a lot of isometric strength work.
mm-hmm.
We were doing a lot of lactate buffering work because we knew that it was going to be a grind out fight. We were also working on his ability to break out of a certain position. So from like an isometric position and then be explosive after that. So
Right.
that's more of like a contrast training that we did with an isometric tension, and then follow that up directly with a explosive movement. So that's helped us. And then his conditioning from a aerobic capacity standpoint is very high anyways. So, you know, what I do like to see all the time when we get, you know, into camp is, one, we have to have a base of aerobic capacity. We have to have some strength endurance. We also have to have some joint integrity. So if that's all taken care of once we start camp, then it's just kind of honing in on his skills and getting the skills training down, because that's obviously more of a hierarchy of importance.
Right.
But when it came down to the Gagey fight, like, he already had a good base of fitness just from just constant training. And then from there, we just kind of specified what we wanted to do from a physiological standpoint to help him, you know, get over those tough times inside the cage, especially from a guy like Gagey, who was going to grind him or try to at least impose his will and throw, you know, massive amount of hard punches and make Dustin have to move around a little bit more. And the one thing that I can say is, now that Dustin has a better hip, he actually got his hip surgery done. And, you know, now he's got stem cells in there. And for a long time, we're talking probably about 7 years, you know, Dustin had an issue with externally rotating his hip, internally rotating his hip, and bringing his knee and hip up to 90 degrees. So when you're talking about movement, he had no ability to rotate through the hip, I'm saying, and he had no ability really to pivot out. He had to back up and then, you know, basically angle out, as opposed to just pivoting in the pocket. So if you look at that, the things he was able to do in that fight, on top of just all his fights, is incredible. And now that we have a true functioning hip, I'm very excited to see what we can do next.
Right. Do you think Dustin, that played a factor against Khabib? Because, I mean, obviously Khabib is an incredible grappler, but on top of that, now you have a hip that's not, you know, like, doesn't have that kind of range, makes it that much more difficult to defend, right?
It's definitely hard when you got a phenomenal grappler like Khabib, and, you know, when he gets you down, he sticks to you, you know, and it's because of the fact that he's very heavy. Like, he can grind you out because of the fact that he can stay heavy on top of you. And if you don't have good hips, if you can't manipulate your body or mobilize your body to a point where you can at least, you know, get back your guard or stand up and control or sweep even, and he has a tough time doing that, because, again, he doesn't have true functionality, or didn't have true functionality of the hip.
Right.
So, yeah, he had to use his upper body a lot, which, again, no matter what you're doing, if you're getting a guy that's putting all of his weight on you and throwing punches at you, and you have, you know, all of the stuff going on outside of the cage, you're going to get a little tired no matter what. You know, everybody is human. You know, you're not inhuman. And these things happen. But I would say, that's why I say, you know, having true function and mobility in each joint capsule that's appropriate for the sport, especially in jiu-jitsu and in MMA on the ground, you need that to happen, because if you don't, then you have to use more muscle and more energy to get out of a position.
Right. I imagine it's also frustrating, and the frustration gets you tired as well. Like, would you agree? Like, because if you can't, like, you know, you're struggling, you can't get up, everything you're doing, it's not working, you know, I would imagine that wears you down eventually.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating, because you don't want to do the things or you can't do the things that you wanted to do. And Habib gave Dustin a different look. Like, it was super awkward on the feet. You know, Dustin's a pure boxer. He likes to have a technical boxing match. And if that's the case, like, if somebody wants to really go like blow for blow and be technical with Dustin, he's gonna pick him apart. You know? So it was a lot different. We've seen a lot of different looks. But we'll be ready, you know, when the time comes to do it again. He's hungry. He was in the gym last night with me. You know, without a doubt, we're looking for a title fight. You know, at any point in time, I want to say at least either at the end of this year or next year. You know, but we're about 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot again, so we're excited.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in the, like, upper echelon of the mix. You know, I think he probably did the best against Khabib as far as opportunity to finish, because, I mean, he caught him in that guillotine that was, Khabib said himself, was extremely tight. There was a point there where it looked like he caught him with a punch. I don't know. It was hard to tell, but it looked like he maybe startled him. So that was pretty close. I mean, Conor's fight, I mean, they gave him 1 round. I'm not sure if against Khabib, I'm not sure how he got that round, but you know, but it was pretty bad. What do you like? Do you think the next fight for Dustin would be, like, good against Conor, or, like, what would you be thinking for him? Like, what do you think? If it was
Uh,
up to you, if you were the
well,
master.
we're hoping for a fight in the next couple of months. To be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
either Dan Hooker or whatever Connor wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Connor kind of can dictate what he wants to do, but Dan Hooker is a great opponent. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that would be a really good fight for him as far as from a style perspective, and he likes those types of fights. He likes game opponents, so
Mm-hmm.
that would be good for him just to get it back in there and get that
Just
win.
mix it up.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, and he's hungry for another win. So I mean, whoever comes up, we'll be ready
Yeah.
for him. But
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. I think it's going to be one of those two. So
you think either Connor or Hooker, one or the other?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Connor is doing his thing where he's like calling everybody, out. I don't know if you saw, like, on Twitter, he like basically ran through the lightweight division, just basically, putting down everybody. I don't think he missed anyone, to be honest with you, but yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. Poirier was screaming basically, like, in every podcast that he did or every show that he did, was that Gaethje had an advantage. I think I sent you a text about after 249.
Yeah.
That Gaethje had an advantage against Tony, and he's has a solid chance against Khabib too, just his style and everything like that. So I mean, he turned out to be right, at least against Tony, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he was saying yesterday when we were at the gym, he was like, "Man, I told everybody, they thought I was trying to be a hater, but
Right.
the one thing that Dustin is, he's a student of the game. So like,
Sure.
I usually go with what he picks,
Right.
because
Yeah.
he's been doing this forever. This is the only thing he's ever done.
Right.
He never did any other sport.
Right.
He's only fought. So if you ever watch that documentary on him, Fightville,
Mm-hmm.
you guys go check that out. But you'll see like the beginning stages of Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah,
watch.
it was his life is pretty interesting. I remember like watching the lead up to Khabib, and it was pretty cool. So how much are you involved in the skill aspect of training your athletes? Is it primarily just strength and training, or are you involved in the actual like skill part of it as well?
I'll put my 2 cents in here and there, but I mean, he has Mike Brown, he has Daya Davis. These two guys help him out tremendously on the skills side, and they're world class. So I mean, I really don't have to dip into that and not have to worry about it too much.
Sure.
The great thing about me is that I have fought. So like, we talk about fights, we talk about certain game plans, and as opposed to anybody else that you would see, like a strength and conditioning coach that has no idea about fighting.
Sure.
It would be hard for him to really connect with. And I think that was one of the reasons, and this is just Dustin in particular, is why he was actually kind of bought in to what I was giving him, in the beginning, because he really didn't do any strength and conditioning beforehand. And he's seen that I was a fighter, and then that, that I know the game, and also like, and I actually truly care about him being the best that he can be. And so with that, I will throw in some things that have direct correspondence to what he does as far as his game plan in the weight room. But we don't get too crazy with the specificity, because again, I don't want to negatively affect the biomechanics of what he does with his striking. But when it comes down to like yesterday, we have a belt squat machine. So I'll put him in the belt squat. The great thing about that is the traction's out the hips. And then he's actually shadow boxing in the belt squat. So there's really there's not going to be any issue when it comes down to rotating and turning over punches or anything like that. It's actually helping him stay strong and increase his punching power through strengthening up the glutes and the hips in general. So those types of things we'll do. But other than that, I don't really get too involved in the skills training. Again, if they ask me, I will throw my 2 cents in there, but it's not like I'm in there, coaching them up during sparring or anything like that.
Sure. But it's a huge benefit to like you said, for you to be in that sport, prior to becoming like the strength and conditioning guru and coach. Because I mean, having like, for example, like if somebody comes from basketball or football and tries to train a fighter, I mean, I feel like it won't jive, they'll be doing things that won't benefit the fight itself, so.
Yeah, I mean, the basics that you need to know if you're working in this sport is that you got to know that they're doing so many things on a constant basis, and then fatigue management is key. when
Mm.
it comes down to working with these guys, and not giving them too much to where they can't handle it or can't recover, because especially in camp, skills, in the sport specific aspects of the camp are going to be more important. And what you're basically trying to do is mitigate injury and maintain strength throughout the entire camp.
Right.
And so that, and then you can peak them going further, especially if you find out what they need most, whether it be power, strength, endurance.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the focus point. And then just coordinating the specifics to that person individually. And also just making sure that, again, you're putting them in the right position to be successful in the weight room, not giving them exercises that they can't handle, things that they can't do from a joint prerequisite standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding the energy systems of the sport. It's a mixed energy system sport, so you have to make sure that you're taking care of all aspects. And that's why we run kind of like a conjugate concurrent model, because of the fact that they are working so many different energy systems, even in a single training session. So giving them that ability to cope with those stresses are important, especially when you're talking about performance, but also having them be able to take that into the fight itself.
Yeah. That makes sense. So let me switch gears just a little bit. So originally I'm, from the Soviet Union, and I was done a lot of wrestling, sambo. So like weight cutting has always been like a part of my life. And that to me was a lot more strenuous than a lot of times the competition, mentally speaking. I was more frustrated about that than nervous about the competition. So like, just from your point of view and your opinion, like, what do you think about just all this like weight cutting that athletes are doing? Some of them are dropping, considerable amount of weight now with all the regulations. You can't hydrate with IVs and all that. Some organizations have done like hydration tests in the beginning of the, like the season or the year, and then you make sure you don't go any lower than, a certain amount. Like, what do you think about that? Just weight cutting in general. You have a viewpoint on that?
It's hard because everybody is going to cut weight to try to gain some sort of quote unquote advantage, no matter what. But I think that the way you stop that is to make more weight classes, kind of like boxing does. And that's going to stop those massive weight cuts. And it's also going to set up for better fights, maybe super fights down the line, multiple belt holders, things like that. We usually like to have the guys around 10 to 12% from scale weight, getting into camp. And then you really don't want them cutting any more than 10 pounds, at the most, the couple of days before the fight, or the day before the fight, or the day before the weigh-in. And the most important part is obviously going to be the rehydration protocol. Right. So if you don't have a proper rehydration, a proper refueling protocol, then you're really running the risk of not getting back to 100%. And honestly, with a massive weight cut like that, 20 to 30 pounds, I've seen even, you're never going to get back. I don't care how much time you have. You can have 48 hours and you're still not going to be, 100% come fight night. So
sure,
with that, I think that the way you mitigate that is, one, you test them, you see where their weight is a week beforehand. If they're in that percentage range, then they're good to go. And also just create more weight classes. It'll make for better fights too.
That's smart. Actually, Joe Rogan has been talking about that for years, about like creating more weight classes. Like he thinks, like, if I'm not mistaken, he was thinking like every 10 pounds or something like that, which, I mean, it makes sense. And then it gives people opportunities to fight that are really good, but they just like, they're just not in, as good in that particular weight class, but they go down 10, they go up 10, they're better. And, now they're a champ, so like you said.
I like to see, like, speaking of Dustin, like, I would like to see a 165 for him. I mean, 155, Dustin, people don't realize how structurally, solid he is, from just like his hands and his wrist, like his tendons and his joints and his ligaments are thick. He may not be like, not the most muscled up guy, but structurally he's a big kid.
Sure.
Big back, big wrist, big hands. So that would benefit him, and I, and a lot of other fighters too as well. And then you got guys that can come down, like John Jones would be great, I believe, at somewhere around like 195 or 190, something like that. And
Yeah.
and Daniel Cormier, same thing. You know, if these guys had the opportunity, they would have multiple belts if they could do that. You know,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
the fact that how good they are.
Yeah, I think that's like the interesting thing about like somebody who's a tweener who's kind of in the middle of those both like two weights. They can go up, they can go down. That's like an advantage for somebody like that. But if you're like you said, like Dustin, you're structurally like a like a bigger guy. It's it might take a lot for you to cut down to 55. And I mean, and you might do it, it might work, but it's like how much are you losing,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that cut. So when you said there's a hydration protocol, like if you don't have it down, like obviously without giving any type of like your secrets away or anything like that, like what would be like a proper hydration protocol? Are we just talking water? Like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys that I really like that does it really well is George Lockhart. We work with Lockhart a lot. Obviously, he's worked with Connor. He worked with Dustin forever. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and we also have one of my old interns who's now worked with Lockhart too, Eric Pena, who works with like Dylan Dennis and a lot of those guys. And they basically do the same thing that we've came up with, which is, you need to have water electrolytes, right? When you're talking about sodium, potassium, magnesium,
Mm-hmm.
you definitely want to make sure that you're getting all of your fluids in and you're fully hydrated before you go ahead and try to digest food. So we usually like to stick to 1 liter of a mix between coconut water and regular water.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we'll put some sodium in there, whether it be pink Himalayan salt, because it has 84 trace minerals in there. So you're getting your minerals there, and all the electrolytes. And then we'll go ahead and do it again for a 2nd liter. And that usually takes about 15 minutes to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time they're done, we usually have them do 3 liters. By the time they're done with all of that, you're looking right around, about 45 minutes, an hour, where they can, right after they step off the scale, to have their first meal.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want to put branched amino acids in there and some creatine too as well. And then the first meal is going to be something very digestible. So something like a light fish,
Mm-hmm.
or some white rice, very light proteins, light carbohydrates, no fats, or at least very little fats, so that allows the absorption of the glycogen get pushed in, and the protein to get absorbed a lot more faster,
Yeah.
because fats will down that digestive process. So that, and then after that, once you have that, then you can go ahead, and we usually like to have like some sort of I would say more nutrient dense carbohydrates, so like a sweet potato, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe like a steak or something for the B vitamins and things of that nature.
Okay. So, and that would work for something that's like when you're under 10 pounds, like, but any more than that and it'd be tough, is what you're saying.
I mean, yeah, like ideally you want to get IVs in them if they're doing more than like 15 to 20 pounds
Right.
of a cut. But if you can't do that, let's say you're in the UFC and a lot of the guys are, then you're gonna have to get as much as you possibly can. And the issue you have there is that guys just don't want to eat. They don't want anything to do with food for a good couple of hours if they cut so much, because
Mm-hmm.
their body's in such a stressed out state that they're not trying to digest food right now, and their body's
Mm-hmm.
not going to let them digest either. So then you got to kind of, as much as you can, fuel the body with water and electrolytes. And then from there, hopefully they can get a couple of meals in. But you want to really see, after they step off the scale, the night of the fight, they should be about 10 to 12 pounds up from where they weighed in at.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. So what do you think? I don't know if you heard, but like, Tony cut to 155, like 2 weeks prior to the fight, then he cut again. Do you think that played a factor in the fight at all?
Yeah, somebody asked me that on Twitter, and like, I mean, you really don't know. Yeah, I believe it could have some negative effects, on his hormonal system, on his ability to take in nutrients,
Mm-hmm.
and then overall just training in general. But I don't know. I mean, you don't know unless you're in the camp itself, and
Right.
So
Right.
I don't go ahead and speculate, but that could have gave him, obviously not the best advantage that he could have had. but I
Sure.
don't think that played a huge role in his ability to do
Right.
what he does on stage. You know, I mean,
Right.
he didn't look he didn't look tremendously bad. He just got outclassed that night by
Hmm.
a guy that had a better game plan, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he looked slower, but it's hard to say, well, oh, like he looked slower because he cut weight 2 weeks before, or he looked slower because he was getting tagged. And then, he was slowing down as he was getting tagged throughout throughout the fight. So,
I mean, he's also 38 years old. You know,
yeah.
he's not a young guy anymore.
Right.
And a lot of people think, they haven't really seen him fight because he's had so much layoffs, due to injury. And that plays a huge role too as well. Like
Sure.
getting injured and not being able to compete like that on a constant basis, where Gaethje's been taking fights almost every other month,
Right.
so that I think played a huge role in it too as well. And
Sure.
I don't think he hasn't had a 5-rounder in a while, so I mean
Yeah.
that could have played a big role too as well.
Yeah, it could have been a combination of those things. So, so getting away from 249, you said you opened up a couple of gyms in South Florida, right? What are the names of those gyms?
They're both my brand. It's Daru Strong Training, and then the other one is Daru Strong Performance Center.
Okay.
So the one that I do have that's more fitness based, we run boot camps out of there, some tactical training, and then the Performance Institute that we're working out of. It's me and Mo Vaughn, who was a ex-baseball player, played for the Red Sox, the Angels, I believe, and the Mets. And we got in business together. We opened up a 10,000 square foot facility for youth athletes, and obviously I'm going to bring my fighters and high school athletes over there. So yeah, that's what we're working on. Once the lockdown is up and we can get that thing rolling 100%.
Yeah. So that's actually. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I said it's real recent. So we just opened it up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and you kind of touched on it just a second ago. With everything happening with Corona, how has that affected like your brand, your business, your training, your athletes, so forth?
Well, at the moment, like I'm at a point now where I do a lot of my stuff online. A lot of my programs are online. A lot of my courses are online. So I guess you would say from a financial perspective, I'm not doing bad.
Right.
Not being able to coach a lot of my guys and not being able to see everybody that I can. I mean, obviously, if you have guys that have fights coming up, I have to train them.
Right.
But we make sure that we stay clean, we stay distant. We're always together. Like, everybody's going somewhere else or anything like that. It's only like you come to the gym, you go home, so.
Right.
And with that being said, it's like we have to be very careful because, again, we have to abide by a lot of the rules here in Florida.
Sure.
So, but that's the only thing that's really changed. Other than that, the best thing that I'm able to do now is spend more time with my family. My kids are out of school. So, my wife doesn't like it because she has to homeschool, but for the most part, it's a cool day. Like I got my son with me right now, and we're probably gonna go fishing after this. And then,
awesome.
I would say my only quote unquote day off. I'm not fully off, but this is a day I get to spend with my family, and then Sundays are usually a day that I just could take completely off too as well. But that's not all the way true because I also have a couple of calls that I have to do and some programs.
Sure.
But I'm not at the gym
right.
like all day.
Yeah. So you're not like constantly working, but there's still some work involved in those days. It's like you're never like really 100% off.
No, not unless I take like a dedicated vacation day, but I have to earn that. I feel like I have to put in a solid, 6 months of pure grinding to deserve a vacation. And just me being me, I haven't really took one in a while. So
that's the life of an entrepreneur, and doing what you love, makes a difference. So, hey, Phil, well, I appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your busy schedule, to be on the show. If somebody wanted to like contact you or like get involved like with your business training, whatever, how would they do it? What's the best way to reach you? And can you like plug in your stuff right now?
Yeah. So the best way, I got my website, darustrong.com. My YouTube also put a lot of videos on there. Phil Daru Strong. Also, my Instagram is @Daru Strong, and my Twitter is @Daru Strong. So pretty easy to follow.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll tag everything in this video. And thanks for coming on, Phil. You take care. Go have fun with your son.
All right, man. Thanks.
See you. Bye-bye.